Atlantian Cataclysm. Since the Nephilim Wars, the Nibiru Anunnaki resistance and patriarchal Melchizedek factions decide to take over the inner Earth and start aggressive campaigns to take over the Earth territories 30,000 years ago. The Syrians warned them about the abuse of crystal technology in the Earth core, and these groups continued to force massive power generators into the Earth and crystal caverns. Several power generators exploded and ripped apart the surface continents of the Earth, more powerful than the previous cataclysm at the time of the Lemurian Holocaust, killing many humans again. The planet Earth tilted on its axis, which damaged all planetary gates, planetary grid networks, the portals and stargates on the planet. All the pyramids and ET technology disconnected and went offline. Flooding and cataclysm destroyed the Atlantean colonies and much of the Earth's surface. This timeline is also referred to as the Atlantean Flood. Egypt Stargate and Sun Takeover. During the time that the Egypt pyramidal technology was rebuilt in the Giza Stargate in that location as the Central Mission Control and ET Interstellar Port, Syrians and Procyon groups were in high security. The Nibiru Anunnaki resistance moved its last Atlantean colony to the Bermuda area of the 3D Stargate, and the Anunnaki resistance continued its conflict over territory and Earth dominion through war and genetic alteration of the DNA. Anunnaki and patriarchal Melchizedeks rapidly digressed their race and genetics through becoming a warring species like the Orion group. The Anunnaki plan takeover of all planet ET technology and to capture humans for genetic experiments to create a worker race 28,000 BC. Further, they negotiate with Orion group Draconians to share the spoils of war of Earth takeover. This action is what allowed the Orion group and Draconians to get a deep foothold into the planet consciousness fields, and when severe genetic damage, such as DNA reversal pairs, to the planet and humanity really began. Third and final Atlantean Cataclysm. With the Orion group now an ally to the Anunnaki Nibiru resistance, they organized themselves into what is known as the intruder races of current times, and these beings are who orchestrate the NWO and the highest factions of the Illuminati plan for Earth takeover. This entails creating a social class system and hierarchy, a ruling class, and a slave class on the Earth, which is the reptilians' Archon ideology. In 9558 BC, the Anunnaki wage war over humanity, organized for the One World Order takeover, Luciferian covenant on the Earth. This is also referred to as the Luciferian Rebellion. These groups go into the main Egypt Stargate and force EMF pulses into the Earth core and crystal caverns to destroy the arc gates and destroy any communication access beyond the 7 solar planes, which they now controlled through the Egypt Stargate in Giza, the ley lines of the Sphinx and GWL network through the frequency fence net. This EMF pulse forced a blast so powerful in the Earth core that it moved the ocean floor and tectonic plates across the Earth globe. It was at this time the Syrians took all ET technology and crystals off-planet permanently to prevent any further abuse from these warring races. Without the ET and pyramidal technology to convert incoming frequencies in the precession of the equinoxes. During the 2012 ascension cycle, the planet Earth could explode, entirely annihilating the species and genetic material. Dark Eon begins. With the last explosion of Atlantis, the Syrians remove all ET and advanced technology which plummeted humanity into the Dark Ages 11,500 years ago. See Ages of Humanity. The morphogenetic fields and instruction sets were destroyed, and time fields collapsed, creating many problems. Astral plane soul-body distortions, and the negative ego pathology, such as diseases, addiction, in the personal identity, were the result. The planetary gates and 4D Giza Stargate that led into the solar body of our Sun, as well as the Earth portal to 8D Galactic Center, was damaged. No one could get in or out of this universe. Guardians from the next universe had to intervene with the Earth directly and incarnate on the planet to help avert future annihilation, such as the astral plane collapse. Frequency fences around 3D solar system and galactic quarantine was placed on Earth, which disconnected all humanity from all higher stellar and guardian communication in 9550 BC. Some representatives from other universes tried to incarnate and help the planet Earth recover from the damage and liberate the Earth inhabitants from their oppressors. Some of those representatives were Akhenaton and Jesus Yeshua Christ and his wife Mary Sophia. The crystal star was aware not much could happen until the galactic center aligned with the Earth and Sun, which opened the universal core into the neutron window, and opening into multiple omniversal cores simultaneously. This is the end of the ascension cycle, which allowed the reclamation of Christ and crystal star to return to this planet to help humanity be rehabilitated into the GSF ascension timelines of the future. Atlantis Timeline Summation. During the Atlantian Cataclysm and what is known as the Luciferian Rebellion about 26,000 to 30,000 years ago, this is when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids, became controlled by the negative alien agenda, controlling races such as the reptilians, the Anunnaki, the Draconians. And this grid became, during this time, under the control of these beings who used these grids for reverse purposes from their original design and intent for DNA, assemble and progression of the human race DNA synthesis. Not using this from a judgment base, but understanding that this last 26,000-year cycle has been a cycle of a dark age of human evolution, and as a part of the plan here of coming into the seeds of darkness in order to return to the age of enlightenment. I'm sure to a certain degree all of this has been orchestrated as a part of the experiential God beingness we are through having these experiences, and through this human experiment, through ascension. This last cycle has been that of a dark age. And primarily, the stargates, portal systems, and grid systems have been under the control of the Anunnaki Nibiru beings and the Draconian beings. Genocidal campaigns. During the last Atlantean Cataclysm cycle, the Dracs sought out revenge and went to the Lemurian continent to finish out the genocidal massacres in Kauai 22,000 years ago, to kill off all the Lemurian race matriarchal influence and Essenes, Christos Templa's influence on the earth. This was to prepare for a completely patriarchal society on Earth as run by the Nibiruans and the Orion Group. They took some of the women for their forced breeding programs. This was the final genocide of the Lemurians, the matriarchal lineage, that was aided by the Anunnaki negotiations and agreements, and the last stage of the Lemurian Holocaust. False King of Tyranny. The old energy purging on planet could be described as the patriarchal exorcism of the false king of tyranny, and this theme would be synonymous with the events that have transpired from the choices made since the Atlantean timelines that split the brotherhoods of humankind. If we follow that timeline, the Atlantean cataclysms is where we had a cataclysmic shift in consciousness that propelled humanity into a fallen state, the dissension spiral and break between the universal knowledge and the level of multidimensional consciousness. Humanity and other races along with us became fully lost in the duality and separation consciousness with a negative ego filter. The ego filters were mind-controlled by the negative alien agenda, intruder races, to control the planetary mind through the patriarchal dominion, greed, warring culture, along with culling genetic preferences made through DNA manipulation. The Atlantean Brotherhood conflict is still playing out its karmic patterns in the contemporary world at this time. There are multidimensional levels, pinnacles of conflicts in the Middle East, Iran Gate, that are fighting over energies and control in ancient interdimensional portal gateways going back to the Lyran Wars. These gateways, or stargates, were dormant and have not been activated in our recent history. These matrices are forming in accordance to the ascending planetary quantum mechanics, of which, as a result, these ancient portals are being reconnected or becoming more active. As these planetary gates open access into other dimensions of time and space, as this is happening on Earth now, most humans still remain asleep to these events, and as such, there are massive conflicts of power, wars, bloodshed, etc., over who is working with accessing those stargates and commanding those energies. Terran genetic digression. Over many millions of years, two distinctly opposing seed cultures emerged as infected by the AI programming of the neighboring Borga, the victim-victimizer software, which was designed to amplify extreme forces of polarity that were particularly effective for harvesting louche energy. The law of polarity was governed by the Gemini constellation, which downstepped mental body creations that were being generated from the AI mutations forming to reverse polarity signatures. Mutations started to form in which one group of Terrans started to be genetically slanted towards more aggression, domination over others, and service to self. This group formed into what eventually played out as the Atlanteans, a patriarchal dominating culture that was very mentalized and scientific. The other culture was much more passive, spiritual, and willing to capitulate through service to others. This group formed into what eventually played out as the Lemurians, a matriarchal culture that was very balanced with nature and was following the law of one. Victors of war rewrote world history. When the planet Earth was slowly invaded through a series of historical timeline trigger events, the victors of the last war were not human beings. Thus, the negative alien agenda was able to freely access the energy quanta of Earth and her inhabitants without resistance, because awareness of this fact was methodically erased from historical references and the information suppressed from Earth humans. Effectively, this produced anti-human control and mass consciousness enslavement on the Earth. The incarnating Earth human was no longer able to naturally access the intelligent consciousness of his own spiritual body, without employing sophisticated esoteric practices that necessitated long-term efforts for rebuilding the consciousness. The techniques for building the light body were taught in the Atlantean mystery schools of various lineages, and this information was a tightly held secret, only given to the sequestered monks, elite, or the ruling classes.